still do not rate it at night. That's why I read it out in the sun, out in the open, bright sunshine, children laughing, things jumping, as I'm reading about people being picked off one by one with a murderer, with a crazy lunatic murderer. Yep, nope, that's me. Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Let's have a reading rush wrap up. Okay, it's been a week. All right, so I discussed in my TBR video what I chose. It's been my life, like interruptions, constantly my life these days. I discussed these books that I'm going to talk with you about. Let's try this again. I want to share these books with you. At some point, I'm actually going to get to talk with them and not answer questions. Yes, these books. Let's get into this. So, for the first book you touch, it was this one, Lizzy Jane by Catherine Ray. I had actually picked this up to move it out of the way to get a book for a different prompt. And so the book that I had for the different prompt ended up not being the first one I touched, which is what I originally thought. But that's okay. I read this, and it's not my favorite Catherine Ray. It's not my favorite romance. The characters and who they ended up with and blah, 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 blah. Like, it's not my favorite. It felt very cheesy. It's kind of like your pros and cons with an author. Catherine Ray does a phenomenal job at creating characters that you don't necessarily be the, what if I go like this? They may not necessarily be stereotypical characters. They may not be Lizzie Bennet in a different light. It may not be Anne Elliot in a different light. It isn't even likable characters in the sense that everything about them is perfect. She does a really good job at writing flawed characters, and sometimes it's like a hit or miss when it comes to the romance. Like, her characters, since they don't fit your stereotypical character, sometimes it seems like the romance or the love story, the guy and the gal and how they come together and how their relationship works, whatever you want to call that, it just isn't the kind that I gravitate toward. And it's not because it was, so I think the hardest thing that I had with it is that she talked on and on and on about this guy back in New York. So she's the one sister, or our main character is flying from New York to Washington, to Seattle, Washington, and she's going to be with her sister to help her through chemo, through cancer, the cancer treatments and all of that, after still trying to process and grieve over her mother's loss from cancer. And so like that's your whole backstory of where you are now. So she leaves New York, she gets to Washington, and it almost sounds throughout the whole book that she has a boyfriend, but not quite, but an understanding with a guy back in New York, and yet she's having this emotional affair, emotional attachments to a guy and his son, and it's kind of, because I had that understanding or thought in my head of as to where she is, I really had a problem with this. She's going on a date on these guys, she's doing this and all, and I'm like, wait a minute, what about this other guy that you have an understanding with back in New York? But it almost sounds like she doesn't have an understanding, and then it made it easier. But throughout this whole book, I had this mental idea from something implied or set up or something that she had this relationship or understanding with this guy who is like, he helps run these restaurants because she's a food cooker, chef. She's a food chef in New York. She runs her own chef business, and she's kind of dwindling, and things aren't as great. I know I'm not sharing a whole lot, and it's kind of getting pieced together, like, wait, what's going on here? Okay, so she's in, she goes reluctantly to Oregon after the restaurant's not cutting it. Her food is not cutting it. It's not up to par. And so she goes to Oregon reluctantly. The sister relationship is horrible. Like, it's on the rocks. This is not good. She doesn't want to be there. They know she doesn't want to be there. It's this tension back and forth. And I think what my favorite part about this was that sister relationship story, because it's not just a one scene where suddenly they make up and everything's happy-go-lucky and it's healed. Like, there's several scenes of that where they mess up and they work together, and then they mess up and then they work together, and they mess up and they work it together. Like, that part of the story I loved. And the difficulties with cancer and the horror without being dragged through the muck, I love that. So that's why I think in the end I gave it 3.54 stars. Loved that. It was very Marianne and Eleanor. You're very passionate and you're very sensible main characters. They were named after Lizzy and Jane, obviously, of the Bennett sisters. Their mom had a fetish over the Austen characters, and it's kind of woven through in the story. And another thing that Catherine Ray does is that she brings in another classical literature within her books, and so Hemingway was like a secondary character. The interesting thing that Catherine Ray does in here is create her main character to relate to book characters, or relate to life, or relate to stuff through food. And so she kind of creates a personality, I'm not really sure how to say that correctly, but basically her knowledge of food and her knowledge of being able to pinpoint what people will like food-wise because of their characteristics ends up helping a lot of cancer patients in here, and I thought that was phenomenal. That was actually really fascinating. Whether or not it really worked, I don't know, but it was really fascinating to read about. So, okay, there's that after that long review. So, worth reading, absolutely. But if you like good, if you like to read a story because of its love story, I didn't really. It was okay. Let's see. Let's kind of go into. And then there were none, and I'm trying to remember which prompt this fit. I don't remember, but this ended up also fitting the prompt. I'll put it down here. Oh, sun going behind the clouds. This also fit the prompt of reading it completely outside. So we went to the pool each day last week except for 2 days. And we were just there for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. And I read this and I could not put it down. I enjoyed it so much. There's the sun again. I remember seeing the movie with, and I know I talked about this, I think in the other one, but I remember seeing the movie with Paul Newman. And I only remember the scene, and I didn't know who did it. I couldn't remember anything else. I just remember the scene with Paul Newman and the gal on the hill, and either a shot or someone falls off a cliff. That's all I could remember. I don't even remember those details. I just remember that. And I know how that ending did. Like, I had it in my mind. But that's not how the book ends. So that was a little bit, oh, interesting. Even more so, I kind of, when I started reading it, the poem at the beginning, I came across the line and I was like, oh, wait a minute, is that a clue? Because that's where my first mind, and then the more I'm reading about this, I'm like, oh, that is not what Agatha Christie would do. You know, I don't think about it logically. I just think about what the author would do for us, the reader. I'm like, she wouldn't do that. And sure enough, it was exactly what it had meant to do. Like, it did exactly what it was supposed to do. And then I went back to, I really think it's this, just, it had all of the setup to be this guy, gal, and I really thought it was. And what I love about Agatha Christie is that she still makes me question if I really am on the right path. And so really liked it. It is more gruesome. Like, people are being picked off one by one, and they know what's going to happen, and it has to do a lot with past sins or past things that they have done, and it's just someone's going out and taking revenge or vengeance on everyone. And this was Agatha Christie's favorite, one of her favorite ones she ever wrote, and it was really good. It was really well written. I mean, it dances a horror line, which I don't like horror, but I really enjoyed this. Still do not rate it at night. That's why I read it out in the sun, out in the open. Bright sunshine, children laughing, things jumping as I'm reading about people being picked off one by one with a murderer, with a crazy lunatic murderer. Yep, nope, that's me. Really loved it. 5 stars. I love Agatha Christie. Anyway. Okay, so I finished those 2 books for Reading Rush. And then I had 3 more days, and to be honest, this weekend was just so busy. My husband had to work this weekend. There was a whole day that, I can say it now, but I had respite care, which basically means I take care of special needs. And so that was kind of my full day. And so I did not pick up a book while I'm there. I just don't, I feel like I'm reading on the job or, scroll, and I just don't want to do that. So I have about 3/4 still to finish of Noah Trevor, Born a Crime, which this is on a different continent than my own. So this one fulfills the prompt, read it on a different continent than you're on. These are my tabs with notes that I want to make on this. And then, like I said, I'm about, maybe more like a third. I think I'm more like a third of the way through. And when I first started reading it, I had posted a picture online and someone says, oh, I really like him. He's a great comedian. I'm like, oh, he's a comedian? So I went up and I looked him up on YouTube, and you get to see clips of who he is and kind of his presentation on life. And he does have like a comedian outlook on some serious affairs. And the one video, I pretty much watched one video and like little bits of different ones, but the one video, like there was one thing I think out of this 15-minute video that I found funny. And it has to do with like how big chicken wings are here in the US and how they are in other countries. And I'm like, well, you actually, when you raise your own meat and you process it and you're, defeathering it and getting it ready to cook, and you're like, that's how big that thing was? Like, it's not as big as you would get at the store, especially the chicken breasts. And so you're just like, how do they get it so big? So it was funny because I have the knowledge of what it's like to raise your own chickens and butcher them. So that I think I found that a little funny. A lot of other things it actually, having that knowledge really helped me, because as I was getting into this book, I actually wasn't all that impressed. And I think it is because he has this humorous look on things that sometimes I'm like, well, can't you just be serious about this? Like, if this is a problem, don't make a light of it. Don't make a joke of it. Like, if this is a problem, just keep to the narrative. But I think that's not keep to the narrative, but just tell it like it is. Stop making a joke out of everything, because then I don't know, do I take him seriously or not? But I think, like, the more I get into it, the more I kind of understand how he presents things, and the more I can see what he's trying to say, and I can see past the humor without divorcing the humor for the book. Does that make sense? Okay, good. Let's move on. So far, his favorite word is like put into every paragraph, and it's getting a little bit annoying. He likes to use another word for poop, and it's just old. It's very old, and there's only so much I can read before I'm just like, you kind of lose what you're trying to say when you keep using a vocabulary word over and over again. So that's where I am right now. I think it's really interesting. The culture, again, that was the other thing about this book, is that most of what he's saying about his culture is nothing I haven't already read about or already known. So maybe I'm not getting as much from it as a lot of people have that don't know more and have read this book. So that's kind of where I am right now with it. I'll finish it. I'll finish it. I don't see any reason not to. I still want to finish it. It's not, I might as well finish it. I want to finish it. It's just not that great as I was hoping for, expecting. So, what do I know? I know nothing. The one that was a complete and total flop for me for this reading rush was The Tutor's First Love. It had the word "the" in the title. Okay, this was written in the 1800s, I think, when it was first published. originally published in 1863. Okay, so you have that language, you have that setting with a lot of words and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm on chapter 5, and they're like 3 pages long chapters. I'm just not getting very far. Complete, total classic. Your settings, your everything. Actually, let me rephrase that. It's a complete and total Christian classic. Everything's just kind of what I expect to keep going. So that one was kind of, like I said, a little flop. I'll keep trying to move forward and move on, but it would make sense if a lot of Christian authors read these, loved them, and kind of mimicked their writing style after this style today in a more contemporary way. Does that make sense? Okay, good. And it's one of the reasons why I quit reading Christian fiction. So we'll see. Again, very predictable plots. As of yet, all I know is that this is not our main character. The girl's father, whose name is David, I believe. Yes. He's got a very strong character, and he knows how to put his boss in his place very respectfully. That was fun. But again, very predictable plots so far. And I can give you all of that from the 5 chapters I've read, or 22 pages. So there's that. And then lastly, I think this was the prompt for a book that you want to learn more about, know more about, grow more on, blah, 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 blah. This one is But Don't All Religions Lead to God. And I started reading it, and then I was like, oh, I gotta stop. I gotta go back, and I gotta make all my notes. So I have covered 2 chapters. It doesn't matter what you believe as long as you're sincere, and aren't all religions much the same? And so it basically just starts breaking down blah, 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 blah. And then one of the things that I really took away from this was, this is a quote, another reason that we just kind of accept the flow, go with the flow, blah, blah, and so on and so forth. Another reason maybe this, at least in the UK and USA, we are practical people. We are not famous for our philosophical thinking. And so I thought that was, it just made me think a lot because of that.
Somebody's trying to steal his money.
Oh no, you better lock it up.
$50,000.
They're trying to steal $50,000? Oh boy. Is that book 1 or book 2?
Book 1.
Well, apparently they don't succeed. There's a book 2. Just ruined the plot.
No, there's this other one too.
Anyway, So far, pretty good. Really taking away a lot from this. Really making me think on different things. And we'll just leave it at that. So, two books that I enjoyed. One I really enjoyed, which is, you know, I guess like Christy. And then enjoyed, I know this is going to be good. It's just going to take me a lot longer to finish it. I'm really thinking that if this follows the classic trend, that it'll be very slow for the first half of the book, then it'll really pick up the second half. That seems to be a typical thing with classics. And then this one, I actually had someone just, because I was like, it's okay. And she's like, just stick with it. So we'll see. The mom is an interesting character. That's all I got to say. But you can tell that he loves his mama. But she's interesting. She's an interesting character. Anyway, so that's it for the Reading Rush. I am enjoying all of your Reading Rush wrap-ups, and let me know if you've read any of those, especially George MacDonald. Who out there has read George MacDonald? What do you think of him? That's it for this video. I'm talking forever. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Have another cup of coffee, read another chapter, stay sane, and I'll see you next time.